and welcome to Morning Coffee with Pizan Academy. I'm Deanna, and today I want to talk to you about some of the curriculum that we put together for March for our middle school students. Now, in middle school, we focus on heroes, and we look at heroes across literature and history. This month, we are focusing on the time period of the Enlightenment through the Civil War, and we chose Frederick Douglass as one of those heroes to explore. Now, one other thing that we do in the Pizan Academy is that we focus on primary sources. We assigned his first autobiography, The Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass. And in this book, he talks about what it was like to be a slave. But what drove him to write this to begin with? Well, he was born into slavery and he was able to escape as a young man. He went to New York and then he settled in New Bedford, Massachusetts. Now, some abolitionists had helped him after he escaped, and he began speaking in abolitionist meetings in the North. And he was so well spoken and educated that they started doubting that he was ever a slave. And so he wrote this first work to show that he was a slave. And in it is a very hard look at the institution of slavery in the South, but also it's heroic in a way that he learned pretty early on the values that he would need in order to become the man he became and fight against slavery and even have an influence over the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments dealing with slavery and the rights of men. So as a young boy, he was about 7, he was taken from the plantation and sent to Baltimore to look after the sister of his plantation owner, Lucretia Auld. She had a child named Timothy, and he was brought there to help care for Timothy. Now, when he first arrived in Baltimore, he describes the look on Lucretia Auld's face as being the warmest, kindest face that he had ever seen in his entire life. And when he first arrived, she started teaching him how to read. And her husband, the master of the house, came to her and said, under no circumstances are you to teach Frederick to read. And so she stopped. And interestingly enough, after this point, she became very hostile to Frederick learning how to read or reading anything. And so he would have to hide reading. And because he no longer was being taught by the mistress of the house, he actually went to the poor white boys in the neighborhood and had them teach him how to read. And so he continued learning on his own. And as he began reading, he came across a book called the Columbian Order. And in this book is a series of essays. And this is where he got his first glance at the ideas of freedom that he would carry with him and human rights and how all humans should have these rights. And this formulated in him this idea that being able to read, he was able to understand these ideas. Now fast forward a little bit more, and he was sent to the shipyards to learn a trade of caulking. When he got there, he didn't learn that trade. He pretty much had to do anything that they assigned him. But he noticed on the boards that there were letters, and the letters corresponded to what part of the boat that the lumber was used for, starboard side, aft, and all of. So he started piecing together letters with words. Now, he could read, but he couldn't write. And so he had this idea that he needed to learn how to write. And so he tricked a boy saying that he knew how to write and wrote these letters that he had started practicing tracing. And the boy was convinced that he could write, and so he started working with him. Also, in the house that he lived in Baltimore, Timothy had started growing up as well and was learning handwriting and spelling. And so when he was left alone in the house, he would take these books and he would trace over what Timothy had done in his school books. And that is how he was self-taught how to write. And so now he was armed not only with being able to read and these ideas that he had found in these books that were in the house that he read whenever he could, whenever the mistress was away. And he now could write. And he knew that this was powerful for his freedom. And it was these skills that when he was sent back to the plantation, he used. And he held church services, and he was teaching other slaves how to read. Now, this got him in a little bit of a quandary because he and 2 other slaves were trying to escape and were caught. And it kind of turned the slave community against him for putting these crazy ideas in their heads. But this also saved him because instead of being sent away back to a farm or sold to another plantation, he was sent back to Baltimore. And it was this opportunity and this knowledge that he had acquired and the skills that he had acquired in a trade, it was this opportunity that allowed him to ultimately escape. He went back to the same family, and the master had him go and learn a trade. And so he did become a caulker. And what he would do, he would go work, and when he came home every day, he would have to give the money that he had made over to the master. Now, this went on for quite a while, and he then asked the master if he could go work on his own and then pay the master a sum every week. They agreed for him to pay him $6 a week, so anything that he made above and beyond that, he could keep himself. And so he started to save some money. Now, he had to pay his $6 every Saturday. And one day he was late because he was out of town on a meeting, and the master revoked this opportunity that he had given him. And so now he was enslaved again. And the first week after that, he didn't work at all. And the master asked why. And then he went back to work. And that's when he started thinking about making his final escape. And it was shortly thereafter that he fled to the north with the help of a woman who he would eventually marry. And the rest is history. He became one of the biggest abolitionists, first working with William Lloyd Garrison and then branching out on his own. He was a publisher, publishing the North Star, an anti-slavery periodical. He gave lectures in both Europe and to the northern states about the abolitionist movement. So after slavery ended, he had moved to Washington, D.C., where his sons were, and he worked in politics. He was a diplomat, and he held several different posts. So Frederick Douglass is a hero because he understood the value of educating himself and what that would mean. He got these ideas early on by reading, and he understood how powerful that knowledge was and how being able to understand ideas that he was never exposed to could really change his life. So he understood that by being able to read and coming across these materials that were in the house that he was enslaved in allowed him to find new ideas. And then he started seeking these out and trying to understand more and more. And this was the value to him, to risk being beaten or being punished for reading anything. So this is why Frederick Douglass is a hero and why we put him in the middle school curriculum and why I think that everyone should read one of his autobiographies. He wrote 3 total, and they are difficult to read at times, but so enlightening about how a man was able to overcome some of the worst things you could ever imagine and enlighten himself through education and ideas. And that's why we included him in the curriculum. Thanks for watching. If you're enjoying our videos, please like them, share with your friends and family, hit the notification bell, and we'll put links to our other social media in the description below. Have a great day, and I'm off to find another hero to study.